Okay. There we are. So I guess we'll just wait a few minutes and see, make sure it looks like we're live. I've got a little red counter going,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a good sign.
And does your remote tech consultant confirm everything is looking good?
My remote tech consultants are delayed.
All right. Well, welcome, Libby Bonfield.
Hello, Libby. How are you? So if Libby can see us, I'm thinking we are good. Excellent. Okay. I'm trying to do two screens at once, so that's always fun. Okay. Here comes my tech support. Excellent. Okay, I think we will get started then. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the virtual release party for All That Was. I am very excited to have you here, so thank you for coming by. I have my glass of bubbly all ready to go. Kari has her glass of bubbly all ready to go. And so I think we're ready to begin. I want to first introduce you to one of my dearest friends and tonight's co-host for this event, Kari Leigh. Hello, Kari. Thank you for helping me tonight.
Hello. It is my great honor and privilege.
So for those of you who have already had the opportunity to read All That Was, you may recognize Kari's name as she is who I dedicated All That Was to. I can almost hear you flipping pages back to the beginning of the book to see what I've written there. So some of you may already be wondering what click means in quotations. Kari and I have been friends for how many years, Kari?
Are she 5?
How many?
Are she 5?
That makes me seem older than I am. So, not sure if I'm okay with that, but Kari is gifted with an absolutely incredible memory. She literally remembers pretty much everything, not just about her own life experiences, but about mine as well. It is a godsend for sure. I can't remember who started Click, but I'm betting you do, Kari.
I'm going to dispute this great memory that you think I have. But I certainly treasure so much about our friendship. I think they have been some of the most significant times in my life, and that's why they stick in there so well. In high school, Tanya and I were very imaginative, fantastic dreamers, thinking of our future and who our futures might encompass. And we were very aware in our, I was going to say misspent youth, but we didn't really misspend much of it.
We didn't. We were good. We were pretty
We were really good.
behaved.
Yeah, we were just very aware that the moments we were sharing together were significant in our life journey. And before the age of social media, where you had a mobile device on hand to do a click and take a selfie, we created Click to take a mental picture of really important moments in our friendship so that we could look back and remember. So that's something that's carried on throughout our friendship, even though we do now have devices on us 24/7 to record it in real time.
So true. And it, clearly Click worked a little better for your memory than it did for mine, but but it was a constant through high school and beyond, where it was, if we didn't have the wherewithal to record something that we just kind of put it in our memory bank, and that is where it came from. So on top of all of that and all we've shared over the years, Kari was actually very instrumental in helping me get this particular book to the finish line. This story had more edits than I have ever completed in the past. And Kari was there. She was always ready to read and comment on every single draft. I think she may have actually read All That Was more times than I have. So because of this and all that she has meant to me throughout the years, All That Was is dedicated to her. I promise not to request that of you for the next title.
You know I would be here if you needed it.
I know you would, but that would just be so nasty of me to do that. So with that, let's get this party started. I have a lovely glass of Chantilly lace. Doesn't that make you want to sing that song? As soon as I wrote it, I was like, Chantilly lace, but I won't hurt your ears with my singing. I don't know if you can see behind me. Can you see it? The bottle? Can you see it, Kari? No, because I've made my screen smaller. There it is. Isn't that pretty? So it is Chantilly lace from the Oliver Twist Winery in Oliver, BC. If you don't know already, I do love a good glass of wine, and you can see evidence of that by popping over to my Instagram feed on Friday afternoon, evenings, and I have a hashtag Friday Night Wine Club, and I post pretty much every Friday. I do favor Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris. Wine recommendations, just like book ones, are always welcome here, so please feel free to share. So cheers, Kari. Cheers, friends.
Cheers. Congratulations, author.
Thank you.
Author.
Isn't that a movie? Oh, it's Arthur. Okay. So if you are watching us via Facebook, you should see the comment section, and we invite you to ask questions, and I will do my very best to answer them. Just so you know, there are some prizes to win today. So the more you comment and ask questions, the higher your chances of winning one of the prizes will be. While you're doing that, I will fill you in a little bit about how All That Was came to be. I can see that somebody else has come in. Cheers. Hi, Karen. All right. So the idea for All That Was began when my husband and I were visiting Seattle for a baseball game. Being just 2 hours north of Seattle, we travel there quite frequently for a variety of events, concerts, baseball games. The Sox only come usually once a year, so we go every time. We walked the streets, visited the market, enjoyed the parks and the waterfront. But on this particular trip, my husband mentioned that he wanted to check out a building that was a block or two from our hotel. So we set off the next morning to have a peek. Keeping in mind, we have spent a fair amount of time in the downtown core of Seattle, but because the building had been shrouded with construction divider walls and cranes and whatnot, I'd never really taken a good look at the building itself before. It was literally covered for what felt like years. When I did finally see the building, I was instantly pulled in and I wanted to know more. We peeked through windows, walked around the block. It's a big block. It's a big building. The building itself is simple and classic, and it is in its simplicity where the true beauty of it lies. And I was instantly in love with it. Hello, Diana. It's good to see you virtually. On the drive home that day, my mind was just buzzing with questions and with ideas. And I don't think I talked to my husband for 2 hours while we drove home. And I just spent the entirety of that drive tapping notes into my phone. And I was desperate to get everything down. Actually, after the fact, when I had begun the researching process for the story, I actually went to retrieve those notes from my phone, but an update had erased them. And thanks, Apple. That was really helpful. But from what I can remember, the story was originally going to revolve around 3 women living in 3 different eras, none of them knowing one another. So their paths were only going to cross within the walls of the sanctuary. And I hadn't actually really thought about this until I sat down to prepare for tonight's event. But I suppose I had an element of the supernatural embedded into the story from the beginning, but I hadn't recognized it as such when I began to write. And it actually became quite a shock to me when Elizabeth showed herself as a ghost. I literally looked up from my computer to a blank wall and said, "You didn't tell me you were a ghost." And her story just went right from there. It's crazy. I should preface that my characters do talk to me all the time. They like 3 a.m., but they do talk to me all the time. So I have a very active imagination. While I researched the story elements and Seattle itself, we visited a few more times, and it was through the research process that I actually became increasingly invested in the city and its history. Seattle had usually been just one of those places to go to for a great concert. Billy Joel is a great concert in Seattle in the open air. But never before had I seen the city as the true gem that it is. On one of our visits, we toured the Leigh Mansion on Capitol Hill. That's it looks like it's an up and coming neighborhood now, like it's kind of trendy. You go through a trendy section of Seattle before you get to it. But to have a home on Capitol Hill way back when in the late 1800s was, you were way out in the country. It was during that visit that I was planning to write, what I was planning to write shifted completely. From the moment we set on to the grounds, I felt a deep sense of loss. It was embedded in the very fabric of the home. And I followed our guide around. She was brilliant and had all kinds of information for us. And I listened intently, and she took us through each room, pointing out all the amazing intricacies, the woodwork. It was just a stunning home, really elaborate and probably very difficult to clean, but just stunning. Like everything is wood carved, and it just, oh my gosh, like
it wouldn't be my house. Beautiful,
absolutely beautiful. As long as I don't have to clean it, I'd be fine with that. So she took us through everywhere, and the last place we visited was actually the bedroom for Mrs. Leigh. And so up to that point, my notebook was being filled with all these stories that our guide was telling us, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was I was looking for. I just knew that I couldn't leave until I had figured it out. So my husband also was going along taking photos of everything. I would just point to something, he'd take photos of it. He's incredibly handy and useful individual to have around. So the final room was Mrs. Leigh's bedroom. And that feeling that had followed me throughout the tour was even stronger in this room. All I could feel was a deep and almost suffocating sense of grief. We sat for our guide to show us some more clippings and other documents that shed light on Mrs. Leigh's life. And it was within a few questions that the story just all of a sudden snapped into place, and grief was at the root of it. I didn't know how at the time. All I knew was that I needed to understand grief in a new way. So all that was began by seeing the building, but then seeing something different completely, and it just shifted. So I usually begin a story with a question I'm seeking to answer. I'm driven by a desire to know why people do the things they do, or why they don't do those things that they should do. When it came to the topic of grief, I hadn't realized just how much it had been pressing down on me before I started writing. So that is basically how it all began. So I'll also give you, hi, Stacy, it's nice to see you here. I'll also give you a little nugget of what else I found. And this one's it's still burning in the back of my head and percolating there. While I was in that same room, Mrs. Leigh's bedroom, where I discovered grief was the topic of the story, I also found another story. I won't tell you too much about it. It's still a few books away from being written, but it is a World War II story, and it does take place in Seattle. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to enter them into the comments. like I mentioned at the beginning, the more times you comment, the more likely it is you could win one of our prizes. So, Kari, do we have any questions?
Oh, Stacey's just excited about the number of comments equals more entries for a prize. Thanks for engaging, Stacey. That's awesome. 2 for you. So while we wait for people to formulate their questions and get them into the chat, Tanya, you've often said that writers are readers.
Mm-hmm.
So what books did you read in preparation for writing All That Was?
I actually read a lot of Seattle-specific books. There is a book on Seattle called Too High, Too Steep. And it really is, Seattle, if you don't know, is very hilly in today's sort of geography, what we consider. Like, you go to Seattle, you're going to climb hills. There's just no way of getting around that. But what we didn't realize beforehand was the hills were even steeper, and they actually regraded almost the entire city. And there's a line in the book that says steep, like as in Denny, the Denny regrade street steep. And it was literally, there's pictures of almost, okay, I'm from the prairies, so kind of mountains, but I know they're not mountains, they're just really big hills. I'll never live that down. And they had a house perched on the top. And they literally were taking all the soil and the hillside away from the rest of it, leaving this house perched on the top. And that was common. So that was one of the books I read, The Sons of the Prophets, which is very, very interesting. And it is all, and they don't mean prophets as in a biblical sense, they mean financial. And it is such an interesting background as to how Seattle, they started out, came as a very church-going crowd, the 4 people that came. And in the end, they were very much fueled by financial wealth and independence and everything. And Denny was actually one of the original people that came on to Seattle. And a fabulous book, a 1920s book. It's actually called 1920. And it's the year that made the century roar. And that was phenomenal. So, and then I read everything else that I can get my hands on, a lot of Googling.
That is awesome. So Stacey wanted to just express her excitement about your upcoming World War II novel. She wasn't necessarily excited about the prize entries, but now she's figured both are pretty exciting. She wanted to share that she lived in Seattle for 2 years in her college years, and she misses it, especially after reading All That Was. Because I think personally, too, that you did a beautiful job of bringing the city in as a character of its own.
Thank you. That, the city has such great history. It always was kind of a gray, rainy, well, not much different than Vancouver City. But it had so much history. It was really interesting, to be honest, is no matter what generation through Seattle, the women were incredibly strong and resilient. They were amazing all the way up. I watched a interview with, I should remember his name, Bill. Computers. Famous Bill from Seattle.
Bill Gates?
Gates, thank you.
Microsoft,
okay, yes. That's who. And his mom in the 60s, 70s was highly, highly involved in Seattle from a political standpoint, from a social standpoint. And so I look at all his accomplishments and I think, wow, like his mom was a working mom who showed her children, what it takes to make your city great. And I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, all the way through. If you dig into any Seattle history, you will find color and a lot of really cool women.
Very cool. So speaking of the women of Seattle, Diana wanted to ask, how did you come up with Elizabeth's name? It's not the usual Elizabeth, is it?
It's not, but you'll notice in a lot of reviews, autocorrect takes over, which I didn't account for. And Elizabeth is a generational name. And so I am pretty ardent about researching the names of an era. And I wanted to pay a little bit of respect to Mrs. Leary because her name was Eliza. So I didn't want it to be Elizabeth. And so when I did some research, Elizabeth just kind of came up as a good alternative. And because I didn't want it to be exactly Eliza Leary, because it is not about Eliza Leary's life. She just inspired some really interesting stories. So.
And Stacey wanted to share that she loved it and she knew that Bill Gates was, in fact, the Bill we were talking about.
Thank you.
Joy has joined in, and she wanted to let you know that she loved All That Was. It kept her up until the wee hours of the night reading.
Oh, thank you, Joy. Me too.
And I know that you,
the editorial deadline.
And you often read into the wee hours of the night. So what are you reading right now?
I am actually listening to an audiobook, The Paris Secret, by Natasha Lester, and I'm loving it. It is so good. I highly recommend it. At first, I was a little bit confused because there's a different perspective, but the characters are really good. I also just finished Olivia Hawker's The Ragged Edge of Night. Olivia is actually a Pacific Northwest author as well, and I can see reading a lot more of her books. It was just a slow burn of just beautiful prose, and it takes place in World War II, but it is actually from the German perspective, which is always intriguing.
Yeah.
So that was a great book.
All right. And you've got some on deck? You have books on deck that you're in your to-be-read pile on your nightstand, which consists of?
Several piles of books. They could be furniture themselves. I do, although this beautiful new bookshelf is courtesy of my husband. It only took 18 years to build, but it's now here, and it's too pretty to put my to-be-read pile on. So the pile didn't move from the bedroom. It's still there in stacks. Maria, I'm going to get the title wrong now. Jackie and Maria by Jill Paul is on the list. I have, Bomb as well. I think I've got Chanel Clayton's latest one too. Anything historical. I'll read anything historical.
Is it easier to ask what you don't have in your to-be-read pile?
Probably anything that just released this week.
Excellent.
That's what I don't have.
So Karen has asked, how long did your research for All That Was take you, and how long did it actually take you to write the book itself?
So usually it is split. Usually it's a 6-month research journey and a 6-month writing journey. All That Was just didn't end, and they're in both aspects. And the research was probably closer to 9 months. And then at the very end, my editor asked me to add a chapter. And I actually was like, she doesn't know this is historical fiction, right? Like, I can't just add something. I have to go research that. So right up until about a month before it went out to early readers, I was still researching. And that's when I learned about the new chapter. For anybody who's interested, was, I don't remember the number. I want to say it's like 17 or something, but it was the chapter where the Seattle Metropolitans were mentioned in winning the Stanley Cup. I didn't know Seattle had a team. They're going to have a team apparently now, maybe when the pandemic's over. But I didn't even know that. So that was something new that I added, and that whole new chapter was brand new into the book about a month before the early readers got it. So it was a deadline enforced edit.
And so all in all, what was the total length, would you say?
All in all, probably about, because I pushed the pub date, so it probably was about 16 months, I'd say. Yeah, almost a year and a half, which is a little longer than I usually like to. I would like to publish multiple times in 1 year, but it's historical fiction and it takes a long time to research things to get it right.
But I'm not sure if people watching know that the early part of 2020, even into the summer, was kind of an unusual year.
It was. Yeah. 2020 was either a year to really remember or a year to completely forget. It depends on your perspective. I'm loving how everybody's like, just get to 2021. We're just going to flip that calendar. And I don't know how it's going to be better. But
magically.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully.
So Diana, we want to thank you for joining us. She had to pop away. And Joy says she read the book online, but has ordered the hard copy. And there's so many beautiful written lines that she wanted to be able to read them. She's looking forward to sharing them with her book club as well when they can meet again.
Oh, thank you, Joy. If you want to message me your mailing address, I can pop in a book plate for you. That is just basically, it's just my signature, but because we can't do book signings and things like that right now, it's a new world. So I have these little stickers that I can sign, and I'd be happy to send you one. Thank you.
Stacy wonders, do you have a daily writing routine?
Yes, I have an ideal one and I have a real one. So my ideal one is blissful in my head, and is, I think it's reminiscence of, Snow White and the birds are singing and that kind of thing. That isn't how it works, but I hold on to that dream. And the reality is that I want to be at my desk ready to write by 9 a.m. at the latest. Sometimes life doesn't work that way, but that is usually my goal. Although moving forward, I'm going to be trying dictation. So I'll be actually speaking the words and then uploading them and then editing them that way. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm hopeful that I can wrap my brain around the process, but if I can do that, hopefully I'll be faster at it and the editing will be quicker. I'll probably still edit in front of my laptop. I don't know why, but words pour out your fingers and maybe not as well out your mouth. We'll see. But for right now, my general writing is, when I'm actually writing, is that I write pretty much 5 or 6 days a week. And I can only do about max 5 hours. It's one of those creative ventures you really can't push beyond that. And 5 hours is not necessarily a good writing day. That is usually where it's taken everything you had to just put words on the page. So I usually like to write a chapter a day. That's usually my goal, and it doesn't always work out that way, but I can keep up with the flow. Some writers like to leave off with a sentence unfinished. I'm just far too type A for that. I like things neat and tidy in a box.
Type A? Sorry, type A, Tanya Williams? Pardon? Really?
Type B plus.
Revelatory news to the masses today.
I like things a certain way, apparently. I come by it honestly.
Oh. Well, Tanya, when did you start writing? What was your first story that you ever wrote?
I don't remember when I first put pen to paper, but the first story that I remember having in my head was when I was 5 years old, and we had just recently moved to Alberta, and we were living on an alfalfa farm at the time, which is a beautiful place for a 5-year-old to live. And the alfalfa grows taller than you, and it's lovely. However, I was not allowed in the field. That was pretty strict about no going in the alfalfa field. But there was this fairly wide, now it's probably not wide, but I was 5, so it seemed wide,
Yeah.
a swatch of grass that ran the entire length of the driveway beside the field. And so my mom and my sister both had horrible, horrible seasonal allergies. So if I wanted to play outside, I essentially had to do so on my own. So I would go out and I remember crouching along beside the alfalfa field, and I was telling a story to the crickets. And I was actually telling them a story about how it is to be a cricket living in an alfalfa field, because of course, I knew and they didn't. So that was my story. I was just kind of telling them, and every time I'd crouch along, then the crickets would stop. I'd get close and they'd stop singing. And so then I'd turn around and I'd crouch the other way. But then if I ever ventured further than I was allowed to venture, we had this massive farmhouse picture window in the living room. My mom would sit, I don't know if she was probably reading a book or knitting or something like that, but she would watch me. And if I got too far, she would rap on the window, and that whole window would wobble. And it was like liquid. It was amazing. It was so mesmerizing. So that was the only thing that took me out of my own story, was something else that was just as cool. That was the first one I remember. So
At the age of 5.
I'm sure my parents can tell you that I probably had more stories that weren't worth telling anybody.
I'm sure you did. And personally, I would like to share that Tanya, throughout high school and right after high school, before children, life before children, she was kind enough to share with me some chapters and some scenes that she envisioned and she wrote, and I still have them folded up in a box somewhere, because I just knew her writing was something special and it was something I wanted to treasure. So
You're kidding.
I do. I have those pages.
Oh my gosh. I don't even remember writing anything at that age.
Yep.
I entertained myself for years with stories in my head.
I have them tucked away for I knew her when. For I knew her when land.
She knew me when. She tried to get me through biology 12.
You have to start somewhere. You need something to fall back on.
It won't be biology, I can tell you that.
Oh, and so I'm very privileged to know that World War II set book in Seattle that you were discussing earlier isn't necessarily the next project on your docket.
No.
Stacy wonders, what is the next project on your docket?
So I think the next one is actually a series. I had actually a light bulb moment early the other morning when I should have been sleeping. The story is basically about 2 sisters, and they work at a certain location, which I won't divulge just yet, in Vancouver, Canada, and it starts in 1927. And I think it'll probably be about which I'm going to say it and then I'm committed to it. And I told myself just the other day, don't say things out loud, because then you're committed to it. But I think I have the right to change my mind, but I think it'll be about 12 novels. But the flip side of it is that I discovered that one of my protagonists actually has a pen pal at a different location. And so I all of a sudden have 2 potential series that will actually intertwine. Yeah.
You heard it here first, Facebook.
Yes, because I haven't told anybody. So although the second
awesome. That sounds fascinating.
I like books that pull in from, like, I'm a fan of that. When I read a book and who does it? there's a couple of authors who will actually have like one character slightly cross over into another of their stories. And I wanted to do that with All That Was, but the timing was wrong. So I didn't, but I can see this. I can see this working. Plus there's going to be a Christmas one. I'm so excited about writing a Christmas book. I'll probably be writing the Christmas book in June, but I am really excited about writing the Christmas book. So that hopefully that will be ready for next Christmas.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we're getting those in the comment section as well. People are excited about the series. They're excited about the Christmas book. The intertwining of the two locations sounds amazing. Yay, Christmas.
Yay, Christmas. I know.
Yay, Christmas.
Yay, Christmas. I love Christmas. I'm a Christmas
I know,
fan.
right? So funny.
My husband is not, but I am. I came home, so I'll tell you guys this. I came home the other day and I'd gone to our local winery and I had bought a box of their red and a box of their white. And their white comes in a box that is green and the red comes in red. And so as he was coming up the stairs, I said to him, "So I started decorating for Christmas." And he literally was like, "Oh, why would you do that?" And he came upstairs and there's two boxes of wine on the table. Like, I think we might be in lockdown again, so I'm just making sure that we can get all the way through winter.
There you go. Be prepared.
Exactly. Everybody else rushes out to get their toilet paper, and I got wine.
Priorities. Priorities.
Exactly.
Oh. So take us through, Tanya, a little bit, maybe your favorite part of the writing process. What do you really like to jump right into?
Okay, so probably it's that moment that an idea pops into my head. So it's before a single word's written. A story holds an incredible amount of potential for me. I see it unfold in my imagination, like as if I'm watching a movie. It's a very visual experience. So those weeks where I get to spend my days and my nights dreaming of what the story could be, that is my absolute favorite part. That is the part that keeps me coming back for more. And you always try to make it what it is in your head. And I don't know if you ever succeed. I don't feel like I've ever succeeded yet, but maybe my expectations are lofty. But I want to see it unfold. I think they should just make movies of my books, and then I could see it unfold, and that would be easier. Then I would maybe feel like I had made that mark. So, but that's my favorite part. That's also the easiest part. So dreaming of what something could be, there's just so much hope in that.
Oh, hope. And that's what a lot of your books are filled with, is hope. Even when the characters are going through strife and struggle. That's something I've always anchored me reading your books, is that hope.
The hope. Yeah. And I think some people find it hard to find them, especially in the Smith series, because Bernice she's an interesting character, and you wouldn't think that you would find hope in that situation, but I think that what is kind of cool about it is that even when Bernice tells her own story in Stealing Mr. Smith, she has hope herself. She has a lot of hope that she can do this right and she can make her life better. She has a lot of hope. The flip side of that is when she, doesn't succeed in that hope, and in A Man Called Smith, and it flips from being Bernice's hope to Calla's hope and to John's hope. And so it's not as necessarily as easy to spot, I think, with the Smith family, but they're troubled to say the least. They're a troubled family.
And it was an integral part, because without that, it would have been very hard to wade through what Denise put that family through.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it would have been too big of a leap to just accept her for who she was in A Man Called Smith without having her be that hero in her own story. You needed to see her journey, even though it was a negative decline. Like, she declined, she tried so hard to get better and be better, but it just, no matter what she did, she'd slip away. And I wish I knew why she did. I do. I don't completely understand her. I will admit she's not my favorite character. I was apparently quite grumpy for the time that I was writing from her perspective. So my family was quite happy that I got out of her head.
And is that one of the hardest parts about writing? Or what would you say is the hardest part of your writing process? Difficult characters, or?
No, I think as much as they're challenging, I think working with a character is always an enjoyable process. But there's this brief spot between dreaming and the actual writing that is very muddy. And that is where it feels like I'm being forced to go forward because going backwards is no longer an option. It's kind of like when it's cold winter morning and you have to get out of bed because, you've got family obligations or work or whatever. You have to get out of bed, but all you want to do is stay cozy under the covers and dream. But something's pulling you. And there's that very brief, uncomfortable moment when you have to put your feet on that cold floor. That is what it's like. It's my least favorite part of moving forward, even though I know most of my books are about moving forward. And I understand and recognize the symbolism there. So it might just be my own process, but it is just, there's a very short amount of time where I think the option of going back is just not there anymore. And so that is your option. You have to go forward. We create our own pain by stalling in life and in writing. If you put something off, you are only delaying the better part of it, the better part of the experience. So, and I do it every time. So
at least now you know that's part of the process, and that is something you have to wade through to get to the other side to make a start.
You do. You wade through the sludge to get to the good stuff.
Speaking of the good stuff, Karen wanted to agree with you that wine is where it's at, trying to get through COVID. Absolutely there for the people as well at their home.
I figure it's fruit in a glass.
It's fruit in a glass.
So we're not doing too bad.
In a glass. Stacey also wanted to let you know we were talking about the Smith series of Tanya's books, which you can find on any major retail site worldwide or your private bookstore. Just get them to order it in for you. But there is a troubled character called Bernice in there, and Stacey said it was a good thing to hear you say that you don't like Bernice, because she sure didn't either. But that she was a fascinating character to read, which I think is testament to your talent as a writer, to make someone so unappealing be so interesting at the same time.
It's funny you say that, because some of my favorite reviews for Stealing Mr. Smith are basically, they're like low-ranking reviews. People have gone like, I really don't like this book, but I couldn't put it down. And I go, hang on. Okay, that's less about the book. Maybe more about where you're coming from right now, and that's okay. Because my job is to make you think, make you feel, make you escape. That is my job. And if I've created some kind of intense reaction, good, bad, indifferent, we're all at different learning places in our lives, but that means I've done my job. And that's the goal. Although I was very well aware that I was not going to run out and write another nasty character right away. Because I felt so bad that I hardly told the world about Stealing Mr. Smith. So yeah, she was something
Oh,
else.
and Karen agrees with you, but your words of wisdom about being a writer, and she agrees that those are wise words that keep us all writing.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Do the
And
uncomfortable stuff.
yeah.
We do hard things.
Stacy says that you are wonderful at your job.
Well, thank
What's
you,
the
Steve.
biggest lesson, though, that you've learned as a writer, as a
Ooh,
wonderful writer?
don't know if I've quite learned it yet because it certainly keeps coming up and smacking me on the back side of the head. Um, trust my instincts
Oh,
every single time. So you write in solitude. You pour everything out and you second guess yourself the whole way through. And every single time before I send it to my editor, I'm saying to my husband, "Oh, I don't know about this. I may have missed the mark on this one. I'm not 100% sure." Send it to my editor, and without fail, and I don't know how she does it, but she knows that whatever was in my outline, that the outline she has not seen, um, but she's read the book now, and she's like, "But what about this?" And I don't know how she knows that it was in the outline but isn't on the page. She does it every single time she'll call me on something, and it boils down to trusting my instincts. But it's usually fear, fear of upsetting somebody, of um, having something be taken the wrong way, things like that, that prevents me from writing those things in the beginning. So that's usually usually where it comes from. But
but the number of
edit.
times we have been on the phone and you have said, I don't know how Victoria knew because I was going to do that, but then I decided not to. But how did she know? Because it really does need to go in there. The
Every
number of times.
And I don't think I show my hand, but I must. I mean, or she's inside my head. That's the other possibility. She's very good at what she does. So, as hard as it is, she's very good at what she does.
Now, is that important? I guess my perception as a non-writer in the non-publishing world, I would just imagine you decide to publish a book and you choose an editor or you get assigned an editor and they do your job and you do their job. Is the relationship that you have with them, is that an important part of the process?
Definitely. Definitely. I think that if you build that relationship on trust and you respect each other's opinions and each other's insights, I mean, so for those of you that don't know, um, two things I did for all that was. The first thing was I said out loud, which is why I have that rule of not saying things out loud, which I just broke earlier today. Um, so I said to an author friend of mine, I'm going to try something new this time. I'm going to write from third person. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this book from third person. She's like, okay, because she writes from third person and has no trouble doing that. And so she agreed that that was a good place to start. And I read lots of books and I did a lot of research. I had all my notes ready to go. And I tried and I tried and I tried for weeks to write from third person. And I just couldn't do it. It wasn't flowing. I didn't feel like I was in a character's head. It was a disaster. So I did what most sane people would do. I chickened out and said, I'm going back to first person. I am writing this book from first person. This is what I know. This is what I'm comfortable with. I feel like I put the character on like I put a coat on and I write away. And literally, my editor did not have manuscript for the full length of time before she called me and said, I really think that this would improve from a change of point of view. If you could take Emily's character and put her into third person. And I was like, she doesn't know what she's asking. Well, she did. She knew exactly what she was asking. And so I made my job so much harder because I then had to take 2/3 of an already written book and change the perspective to third person point of view, which again did not flow easily for me. I felt stilted in it, and I think there are still spots in the book that I see that I go, that wasn't my best. So it's that kind of thing. So I did it to myself, but Victoria called me out on it. Hence my new rule, don't say anything out loud, which apparently I can't live by. I'll be writing 12 books in that series. Whether I want to or not.
That's so funny. So here we are on November 17th. All That Was launched into the world on October 20th. Sadly, for one reason or another, this launch party was delayed. But in the interim, have you been pleased with how All That Was has been received by your readers?
I have been. I've actually been very humbled by the response that it has received. I think it's partly timing that because the topic is about hope and moving forward, and in the world that we're in right now, that is applicable. I think that there is also something to be said about having a belief in something other than ourselves. And I think that the nature of the story taking place in the church it's just a natural. There was no way to write a story that takes place in a church without bringing in a little bit of religion to it. I am not a Christian fiction writer. That is not how I identify myself. But there has been a lot of readers who do sort of add that title to me, just because I think I write clean. I don't do, you won't find a lot of swearing, nudity, anything like that on the page. You just won't. I'm not comfortable writing it, so it won't happen. Sorry, was there a question that I've completely forgotten what you asked me now?
No, you're just describing how you feel your readers have welcomed All That Was and how that has impacted you.
It actually has really made me affirm that I'm on the right path with where I'm taking the writing. And so there's something, this may sound strange, because I think that readers tend to have the idea that an author knows what they're going to write about, which isn't always the case. It just doesn't. You may start with one idea and end up in left field. So what I learned with All That Was is that I want to write about strong emotions still, things that tug at your heart, things that make you think about the world at whatever era that is, whether it's 1927 or 1960. There's things going on in the world at those times. But strong women, I think it's important to lift up the history of strong women. And I don't think there's a time in history where we weren't strong. I just think that history hasn't done a very good job of recording it. So I took a picture when I was researching All That Was. I was in the Seattle Public Library, a great library. If you're in Seattle, you have to go there and go into the Seattle room. It's stunning. It's amazing. But I had a desk full of books that were all about men in North America, the history of men. And I found one book about the history of women in North America. And I was like, yeah, that needs to change. It really needs to change, because it's not just one or the other. It's the whole. It's everybody's contribution that makes our world what it is. And so we all have to contribute. We all have to give it our all, and we have to do what is best. It's not always easy, but it's part of it. So I hope that I can portray, examine difficult situations, difficult circumstances from a woman's perspective, and to see the strength in that. That is what I'm I could sort of narrowed it down with All That Was. I was like, I think I know what I want to write about now. It took me a little while.
It is wonderful. And All That Was is a beautiful love letter to the strong women of the Pacific Northwest. And here in Southwest Canada, we can kind of join ourselves in the Cascadia community.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you for portraying that beautiful story for us.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it a million times. I see we're climbing up to 5 o'clock here, so we should probably go for prizes.
We should. Let's just first invite anyone who is watching or listening that hasn't actually asked a question or made a comment into the chat. Please do make yourself known so that we can make sure that you are entered in for prizes. We have some lovely interactions, and we've had some great questions from Tanya's readers and followers. Is there anyone else that wants to be included in the prize draw? Ooh, ooh.
Oh, I'm off camera. There we go. It's backwards when you're on the camera.
How did Bob's beauties do it?
I don't know. I was never inclined to hold that position.
All right. Well, we've given about a minute in. We'll give say 10 more seconds for people to pop something into the chat and let themselves be known if they want to enter for one paperback copy of All That Was, and there are 5 e-copies available. Ready? All right. Well, I would say for top interaction, for curiosity, enthusiasm, and getting the ball rolling today, we're going to award today's paperback copy to Stacy Yulfert. Ulfert or Yulfert? Yay! Thank you for interacting with us today.
So, Stacy, if you can message me your mailing address, then I can, I'm wondering if you already have a copy. I'm not sure. So, but if you do have a copy and you'd rather have one of the other ones, I can do that as well. So if you just message me, we can get that sorted out. Congratulations.
And then for e-copies, we're going to award to Joy Clark.
You're writing this down, right?
To Karen Jansen. To Diana, is it
Brandmeier?
Is that how you say it? Sorry. And one more is Libby Barnfield.
Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. It was really nice to celebrate. We are doing things very differently nowadays. And when I had my first book release, we actually had a real party at a beautiful restaurant here in South Surrey, and it was a wonderful evening, and I would like to do that again. So fingers crossed that we will get to do that again, and I'm hoping that maybe by the time the next book, the first or the second in the series, comes out, we can maybe even celebrate at that location. Wouldn't that be fun? I can see us all in 1927 attire. It's all about the dress.
Oh my word. I'm so excited right now.
So, you'd all have to come to Vancouver, but it'd be a good party if we're allowed to have one. We're currently in Vancouver. Road trip, absolutely. Absolutely. In Vancouver, we're currently allowed to gather with the people that we live with, and that is it. We are kind of on that kind of a lockdown right now. So, and our city is, our numbers are not good right now. We are out of control. So, yes.
Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for making a safe, COVID-free gathering to celebrate the launch of All That Was. It deserves celebrating. Tanya Williams, author, deserves celebrating. So cheers and congratulations to you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.